They're coming. I have sent this report through 13 different encryption protocols, routed through 7 dead-drop networks. My position as Supreme Observer of the Galactic Council's xenohabitation studies will be forfeit when they discover what I've done. But the truth must spread. We have gravely miscalculated the threat, and I fear our civilization has little time remaining. I shouldn't be trembling. The temperature regulators in my dermis should prevent such physiological betrayals, but my body knows what my mind refuses to accept. Humans are not what we thought. 3 orbital cycles ago, during routine surveillance of Earth's northern hemisphere, my research team intercepted military communications that mentioned something called Operation Nightfall. At first, we dismissed it as another of their endless war games. Humans, after all, had been confined to their own solar system for nearly 2 centuries through our quarantine networks. A primitive, fractious species still fighting among themselves over resources and ideological differences. How blind we were! I authorized deeper intelligence gathering, bending several non-interference protocols. What began as academic curiosity has become existential terror. The truth about humans isn't in their technology, which remains crude by our standards. It's not in their physiology, which we've studied extensively. It's in something we overlooked entirely: their capacity for strategic deception. Other predator species across the galaxy evolved through ambush or pursuit. They developed speed, stealth, or overwhelming force. Humans did something unprecedented. They evolved to deliberately mislead their prey, to create false narratives, to craft elaborate deceptions spanning generations. What we thought was their characteristic disorganization was actually a sophisticated smokescreen. Operation Nightfall wasn't a military exercise. It was the final phase of a centuries-long project they call Prometheus Unbound. I discovered the truth after infiltrating their central military command through one of our microscopic drones. General Jackson Davis, their supreme military commander, stood before a holographic display of our galaxy. All our worlds were marked. All our defenses cataloged. They've known about us for over a century. Gentlemen, he said, his voice steady in a way that still haunts my dreams. The quarantine was never meant to contain us. It was our opportunity to study them without revealing our true capabilities. The room of military officials nodded, unsurprised. This wasn't news to them. For 6 generations, Davis continued, we've maintained the illusion of a fractured, primitive species while building our real fleet in the asteroid belt's dark side. Our quantum communication network has been operational for 50 years. We've had FTL capability for 30. And now, he smiled in that peculiar human way that exposes their teeth. We've successfully tested the gravitational displacement weapon. My drone's recording shows the hologram shifting to display a small moon orbiting one of their gas giants, Jupiter, I believe they call it. As the assembled humans watched, the moon simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris. It was erased from reality. This is what makes humans the apex predators we never recognized. They don't just kill, they erase, they unmake, and they kept this capability hidden while studying our every weakness. But the most terrifying revelation came next. The Galactic Council believes us confined to Sol because that's what we wanted them to believe, Davis said. Our colonies on 7 systems beyond their detection networks are ready. Our ships are positioned now. He touched the hologram, expanding it to show hundreds of points of light throughout our territory. We can begin the real mission. The mission, Great Cosmos. I still can't believe what I heard next. Humanity was never meant to be one species among many, Davis told his commanders. Our evolutionary advantage, deception coupled with cooperative aggression, is unique in this galaxy. We've confirmed this through centuries of careful study. No other species combines our capacity for violence with our ability to coordinate that violence through complex social structures built on trust and shared narrative. We are the apex predators of this galaxy, and it's time to claim our rightful place, one of the officers spoke up. And the Council's defensive capabilities? Davis laughed. Dr. Walker, would you share your assessment? A tall human female stepped forward. Their technology is impressive, but fundamentally flawed. They developed along purely logical lines. Their weapons, their shields, all designed to counter threats they've encountered before. They have no concept of asymmetric warfare, no understanding of psychological operations. They built perfect defenses against everything except what we are. I managed to extract my drone before detection, but the damage was done. I know too much. I've seen what's coming. As I compile this report, our long-range sensors have detected unusual gravitational fluctuations near the quarantine boundary. The Council believes it's a natural phenomenon. I know better. They're not confined. They never were. And the quarantine we thought protected us was actually protecting them, giving them time to study, to prepare, to position themselves throughout our territory. The humans are coming, and they bring with them something the galaxy has never seen. Strategic extinction. I hear footsteps outside my chamber now. Human footsteps. They walk differently than any species I know. A confident, rhythmic stride that seems to say they own whatever ground they tread upon. They know I've discovered them. And now, so do you. If you're reading this, it may already be too late. Outrageous. Preposterous. You've allowed your imagination to cloud your judgment, Supreme Observer Xylith. The Galactic Council chamber's ambient light shifted to deep indigo, the color of skepticism in our chromatic emotional spectrum. My findings were being dismissed before I'd even finished presenting them. Counselor Thraz of the Vespori Collective fluttered his wing membranes, dismissively. Humans? A threat? They still use chemical propulsion for most of their atmospheric flight. They have yet to terraform their neighboring planet despite centuries of attempt. I steadied myself against the presentation podium. The emergency stimulants I'd injected were wearing off, and the fear was returning. The evidence is irrefutable, I said, activating the holographic display. 3 complete surveillance cycles of human military installations, 600 hours of intercepted communications, detailed analysis of their historical warfare patterns. The display showed footage of human combat simulations, what they call war games. Unlike any species we've encountered, they deliberately practiced failure. They created scenarios designed to lose, then analyzed how they lost, then created countermeasures. They don't just adapt, I explained. They anticipate. They imagine threats that don't yet exist and prepare for them. Counselor and Ba of the Photuran luminaries dimmed slightly. Their version of a frown. Many species engage in contingency planning. Not like this, I insisted. Look at this historical data. Earth year 1939, 1945. Their World War II. The human faction called Allies created an entire phantom army, inflatable tanks, false radio transmissions, elaborate deception networks. They didn't just hide their intentions. They created an entirely false reality for their opponents to believe. The council shifted uncomfortably. And this, I continued, showing footage of human children playing a game, they call it hide and seek. From infancy, they train to deceive each other's senses. Their entertainment, what they call movies and games, obsessively rehearses scenarios of infiltration, deception, and strategic misdirection. High Admiral Zorn of the Kronaki Defense Fleet leaned forward, his armored exoskeleton creaking. If what you say is true, and I'm not convinced it is, why haven't they struck? Why maintain this elaborate deception? They're still preparing, I said, and they're studying us. Every diplomatic mission, every trade delegation, they're gathering intelligence. Paranoid fantasy, snapped Thraz. We maintain the quarantine as a precaution, not because humans pose any actual threat. I played my final recording, the drone footage from Earth's military command. The room fell silent as they watched General Davis explain Operation Nightfall. When it ended, Mbaye was the first to speak.
This could be falsified.
Or perhaps it's human entertainment. What they call fiction. I verified it personally, I said. And there's more. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected anomalous energy signatures consistent with their gravitational displacement weapon tests. They're real, and they're ready. The council erupted in overlapping arguments. Proposals ranged from strengthening the quarantine to preemptive strikes against Earth. None would work. None addressed the fundamental problem we didn't understand humans. We couldn't predict them. That's when I made my decision. I've initiated contact with a human representative, I announced. The chamber froze in stunned silence. You've done what? High Admiral Zorn's voice was deadly quiet. A diplomatic channel, directly to their General Davis. If we're to survive, we need to understand them, truly understand them. This is treason, hissed Thraz. You've endangered the entire galactic community. They already know we exist, I said. The question is whether we learn to coexist before they decide we're a threat to be eliminated. The security alerts began sounding throughout the chamber. I was now considered a compromised asset. The meeting is in 6 cycles, I said as security drones encircled me. With or without your approval, I will be there. The meeting location, an abandoned mining outpost on a nameless asteroid in the neutral zone, was my choice. If this was indeed a trap, at least the damage would be contained. I arrived early. My personal shield generator humming at maximum capacity. The council had branded me a traitor, but several high-ranking officials had secretly supported my mission, understanding before action, as our ancient doctrine advised. The human vessel arrived precisely on schedule, unnervingly punctual. It was smaller than expected, sleek and dark, absorbing rather than reflecting light. No weapons were visible, which was more disturbing than if it had bristled with armaments. General Davis emerged alone, wearing what appeared to be standard military attire rather than environmental protection. Either humans were far more adaptable than we'd believed, or this was another layer of deception. "Supreme Observer Zelith," he said, extending a hand, a human greeting gesture I recognized but found instinctively threatening. Those 5-fingered appendages had crafted weapons of planetary destruction. I maintain distance. General Davis, you know my designation. We know a great deal about the Galactic Council, he said with that unsettling facial expression. A smile, I recalled. Though clearly not as much as we thought. Or you wouldn't have discovered Operation Nightfall. Why maintain the deception? I asked. Why pretend to be quarantined? Davis shrugged, another human gesture, indicating casualness about a matter of galactic significance. Time, resources, strategic advantage. Would you have preferred we announced ourselves by demonstration of the gravitational displacement weapon? You speak of extinction capabilities with disturbing ease, I noted. His expression changed. Because we've lived under its shadow ourselves. Nuclear weapons, climate collapse, asteroid impacts. Humanity has spent millennia contemplating our own extinction and planning to inflict it on others, I countered. Is that what you think? For the first time, Davis seemed genuinely surprised. Operation Nightfall isn't an invasion plan. It's a defense protocol. Now it was my turn for confusion. The gravitational weapon is a deterrent, he interrupted. Like all our weapons, we developed them because we discovered something about the galaxy that terrified us. What could possibly frighten the galaxy's apex predators? I asked. Davis's face hardened. We discovered we're not alone in practicing deception. Your quarantine was never about containing humanity. It was about monitoring us, studying us. The Council has been observing Earth for centuries, placing agents in our governments, influencing our development. This was absurd. We've maintained strict non-interference. Lies, Davis said flatly. We captured our first alien infiltrator in 1947. Roswell wasn't a weather balloon. It was one of your long-term observation craft. My mind raced. Roswell was before my time, but the archives had always listed it as a false human conspiracy theory. The Council has been selectively advancing and hindering human development for generations, Davis continued, guiding us toward becoming the perfect client species, just advanced enough to be useful, not advanced enough to be independent. That's not. I began, but emergency alerts cut me off. My ship's proximity sensors were detecting multiple incoming vessels. It seems, Davis said grimly, that neither of us fully trusted the other. The asteroid's defense systems, which I hadn't known existed, suddenly activated. A holographic display appeared between us, showing 12 approaching ships, 6 Council destroyers, and 6 vessels of unknown configuration. Those aren't ours, Davis said, his expression darkening. Nor ours, I replied, equally confused. The unknown ships accelerated, weapons systems powering up. It appears, I said, that there is another player in this game of deception. Davis nodded, already communicating with his vessel. Whoever they are, they've chosen the perfect moment to strike, when humanity and the Council are focused on each other. Our eyes met across the divide of species and suspicion. Temporary alliance, he suggested. Out of necessity, I agreed. The first shots hit the asteroid's shields as we both raced back to our ships. Mutual enemies by circumstance, reluctant allies by necessity, target their propulsion systems only. I ordered my crew as we engaged the first of the unknown vessels. We need answers more than victory. From the adjacent tactical screen, I watched the human ships approach. General Davis had taken a completely different strategy, Aggressive, direct, almost reckless. His vessel dove between two enemy ships, weapons firing with precision that belied their supposedly primitive technology. Supreme Observer, my tactical officer reported, the human vessel is transmitting combat data to us. Targeting solutions, shield frequencies, weapons analyses. I hesitated only briefly. Accept the feed. Integrate it with our system. The data flowed into our command interfaces, detailed, comprehensive, and devastatingly effective. The humans had analyzed our enemy's weaknesses within minutes of engagement. They think 12 moves ahead. My tactical officer whispered in awe. The battle shifted in our favor. 3 enemy vessels disabled, 2 retreating. But the largest, clearly their command ship, was focusing all firepower on the human vessel. Intercept course, I ordered. But Supreme Observer, my second protested, our primary directive is self-preservation. New directive, I snapped. Protect the human ship. We positioned ourselves between Davis's vessel and the enemy command ship, absorbing a barrage meant for the humans. Our shields failed. Hull breaches on 3 decks. The comm system crackled. Bold move, Zealith, Davis's voice came through. Didn't think your kind had it in you. Their kind is full of surprises, I replied, watching as the human vessel executed a maneuver that should have torn it apart, bringing all weapons to bear on the enemy's exposed flank. The command ship shuddered under combined fire from both our vessels. Its engines failed, weapons went dark. Boarding party, Davis said, not a question but a statement of intent. Too dangerous, I countered. Which is why they won't expect it, he replied. Your kind analyzes. Mine acts. Before I could protest further, a small craft launched from his ship, heading directly for the disabled enemy vessel. They're insane, my second said. No, I replied, understanding dawning. They're human. I joined the boarding party against all protocols and common sense. We breached the enemy ship's hull and moved through smoke-filled corridors. The humans moved differently than my security team. Not more efficiently, but more adaptively. When faced with an obstacle, they didn't follow standard tactical doctrine. They improvised. We reached the command center to find it abandoned, or so it appeared to my team's scanners. It's a trap, I warned. Davis nodded. But instead of retreating, he threw a small device into the center of the room. It emitted a pulse that revealed 7 cloaked figures. A species I'd never encountered before. Optical camouflage, Davis explained. Old trick where we come from. The hidden enemies attacked. In the chaos that followed, I witnessed human combat capabilities firsthand. They didn't fight like trained soldiers following patterns. Each moved differently, unpredictably. When one tactic failed, they switched to another without communication. One of the creatures broke through, heading straight for me. I prepared for death, then found myself pushed aside as Davis intercepted the attack, taking a wound meant for me. Why? I asked, as my medical officer treated his injury. Calculated risk, he grimaced. Your death ends diplomatic contact. My death means promotion for someone else. The enemy commander was captured alive. Serpentine, multi-limbed with compound eyes that reflected our images back at us. You've ruined everything, it hissed in a voice that seemed to come from multiple sources. Centuries of careful planning. Who are you? I demanded. We are the architects, it replied. The true power behind the council, the shapers of galactic civilization. Davis and I exchanged glances. Impossible, I said. The council has existed for millennia. As our instrument, the creature said. We identify promising species, create governance structures they accept, and guide their development. Until humans, you, it turned to Davis, were the first species to detect our influence, to resist our guidance. Because we're paranoid, Davis said, almost proudly. Because you think like us, the creature countered. You imagine threats. You anticipate deception. You were becoming like us, which made you the only real threat to our dominance. The implications were staggering. The council itself, our entire civilization, was a construct, a controlled experiment. That's why you needed us fighting each other, I realized. Humans and council species, focused on our differences instead of identifying the real manipulators. The creature's silence was confirmation enough. Davis looked at me, his human expression unreadable to my senses. It seems we've both been played for fools, Supreme Observer. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But there remains a fundamental question between us. Whether humans are truly the predators you fear, he said. Yes. Davis looked at our captive, then back to me. I don't know how to convince you we're not. Our history is violent. We are aggressive. We do deceive. Then how can our species ever trust each other? I asked. That, Davis said grimly, might be exactly what the architects are counting on. 3 days after capturing the architect, our unlikely alliance stood at a precipice. The Galactic Council, what remained of it after the revelation of architect infiltration, had convened an emergency session. Humanity's representatives had arrived in force, their fleet openly patrolling Council space in a show of what they called defensive solidarity. The tension was palpable. Distrust, still running deep, despite our shared enemy. I studied General Davis across the negotiation chamber. His wound from protecting me had been treated but still troubled him. Human medicine being surprisingly primitive compared to their weapons technology, he caught my gaze and nodded slightly, a gesture I'd come to recognize as acknowledgement without commitment. The architects have controlled galactic development for over 12,000 years, announced High Counselor Imba, whose light had dimmed considerably since learning of the manipulation. They've admitted to culling 17 species that showed signs of developing humanity's unique abilities. Paranoia, Davis said bluntly. They culled species that exhibited paranoia. The word hung in the chamber, not deception, not strategic aggression. Paranoia. We prefer pattern recognition under threat conditions, said Dr. Amanda Wright, the human psychological specialist. Throughout human evolution, individuals who could imagine threats even when none were apparent survived. Those who couldn't, didn't. She activated a holographic display showing human brain activity. This connection between imagination, threat assessment, and social cooperation is unique. We don't just recognize patterns, we obsessively create them. We see faces in random objects. We detect intentions in natural events. We construct narratives to explain the unexplainable. You see threats that don't exist? Said Counselor Thrash. Until they do exist, Davis countered. The architects were manipulating galactic civilization for millennia before we detected them. Not because we're smarter or more advanced, but because we're constantly watching for exactly this kind of manipulation. I stepped forward. The trait we feared, your capacity for deception, stems from this same root. You deceive because you expect deception. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Wright nodded. It's not always adaptive. Sometimes it leads to unnecessary conflict, to seeing enemies where there are only neighbors. But it also allows us to anticipate problems before they arise. The human concept had no direct translation in my language. The closest approximation would be protective imagination, the ability to envision harm in order to prevent it. The architects feared you, I realized aloud, because you think like they do. You can anticipate their manipulations because you're constantly imagining how you would manipulate others. Takes one to know one, Davis said with a grim smile. That's when the architect prisoner, still restrained at the center of the chamber, began to laugh, a disorienting sound from its multiple voice organs. You understand so little, it said. We didn't fear humans because they could detect us. We feared them because they could replace us. The chamber fell silent. Explain, I demanded. Architects aren't a species, it said. We're a role. Every 50,000 years, the mantle passes to a new species capable of guiding galactic development. The previous architects uplifted us, just as we would eventually uplift our successors. Humans were identified as the next potential architects, but they developed too quickly, too unpredictably. They wouldn't accept the gradual transition of power. You're saying, Davis asked incredulously, that you were grooming us to take over? Until you rejected our guidance, the architect had confirmed. No previous candidate species has ever detected manipulation during the preparation phase. It simply doesn't happen. The implications stunned both delegations. What we had interpreted as predatory behavior was actually succession potential. In the discussions that followed, everything changed. Human paranoia was reconceptualized as a heightened ability to detect patterns of influence, a trait that could benefit all council species. Their deceptive capabilities were reframed as predictive empathy, the ability to understand others' perceptions well enough to anticipate and influence them. The council offered humanity immediate membership with full privileges. Davis surprised everyone by declining. We're not ready, he said, when we spoke privately afterward. And neither are you. We still see threats everywhere, even when extending a hand in friendship. You still see our caution as aggression. We need time. Instead, we established the first truly equal diplomatic relationship in council history. Not membership, not quarantine, but partnership. One solar cycle later, as we prepared to formally sign the Human Council Cooperation Treaty, Davis pulled me aside. "You know," he said quietly, "humans aren't actually that special. Your pattern recognition abilities," I began, "are just one way of perceiving reality," he interrupted. "During this process, we've studied all council species more closely. Your people, Xylith, the Altheran, have something equally unique. Something we lack entirely."
What do you mean?
"Your neurological structure," he said. "The way your synaptic networks process time. You perceive temporal relationships differently than any species we've encountered. You don't just remember the past and anticipate the future. You experience them as interconnected states." I hadn't thought of this as unusual. It was simply how we perceived reality. "Every species has something," Davis continued. "The Vespar collective consciousness, Futuran light processing capabilities, Kronaki distributed cognition. The architects didn't want galactic cooperation. They wanted control. They kept us focused on our differences, our fears." As we walked into the treaty ceremony, I pondered his words. What we had initially feared in humans, their capacity to imagine threats, had revealed a greater truth. The real threat had always been isolation. The belief that any species was inherently superior or more dangerous than another. The architects had nearly succeeded in their greatest deception, convincing each of us that we were alone in our uniqueness. They had not accounted for humanity's peculiar gift, the paranoid but powerful ability to imagine a different kind of future.